Thank you and welcome to Cabinet for this evening. First of all, we have apologies from Councillor Banwaite. Any other apologies? Councillor Afzal as well. Any other apologies? No. No late items as far as I'm aware. Thank you, Janie. Receipt of petitions, there are none. Identification of urgent items to which calling will not apply. There are none. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No. Okay. Minutes of the meetings held on the 9th and the 16th of March. Can I ask Cabinet colleagues to indicate if they're happy to accept those as a true record? Okay, agreed. Thank you. So we come on to item 7. Which is recommendations of the Corporate Scrutiny and Governance Board, which, as usual, we will take in as the items arise during the course of the meeting. Item 8 is recommendations from Overview and Scrutiny Boards. So there's a number of recommendations there on a number of topics. Can I ask Cabinet to note those? Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to ask about, on page 2, we're talking about social workers that could be blacklisted. Just for the benefit, my benefit, maybe others, when we talk about if a social worker is bad, and that's the wording used there, or particularly bad, what mechanisms are in place to actually sort of pigeonhole them as bad or particularly bad? And the second point is, if the scrutiny boards are recommending sort of seeking assistance, could we possibly widen the net a little bit and look towards an authority that has a very high quality level of social workers that we could maybe seek assistance from in some way?
I don't know if Andy, you want to come in on that, or Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Shall I try and answer that one, Councillor? The Health and Care Professionals Council has a very clear set of protocols and guidance for qualified social workers, which all social workers are bound to sign up to and are registered with the Council to practice as qualified social workers. So it's incumbent on the local authority as the employer to ensure that those codes of conduct are applied. And it ranges across all aspects of practice, and action has to be taken where there are any concerns that social workers are not practicing in line with the codes of conduct. And within the Council, as in all organisations, there'll be a range of protocols within HR that we have to follow where there's any aspect of misconduct around practice, and it's incumbent on us as an employer, if we go down that particular route, to report that through to the Health, Care and Professions Council, and then they will undertake their own investigation and will conduct their own hearing. So there could well be hearings that we hold internally, and then once we've made the decision to refer it through to the HCPC, they will conduct their own investigation, and that will be in relation to a range of different conduct and performance issues.
Just to clarify then, at what point would they be classified, if you like, as bad though? I'm trying to understand what the ranking system in some way, the wording there, it's a bit...
It's not a case of what is a bad and what is a good social worker. It's about ensuring that social workers are working in a competent way, in line with the code of conduct that's been agreed by the HCPC, and enacting the statutory responsibilities and duties that we have as a local authority which social workers operate on the front line. So there are a list of aspects of practice that we expect social workers to perform and undertake, and we manage and monitor that through supervision and managing individual performance processes, and that's the case across adults and children's services.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you. Just sort of carrying on a similar theme, if we're obviously having social workers via agencies, is there a way we know what their background is, previous employers, and whether they have had any question marks over their performance at other authorities?
Yeah, Andy, yes, if you could reply to that, please.
Yeah, I can answer that briefly, Chair, if that would help. Well, all social workers, whether they're on our books or on the books of agencies, would have had all the necessary checks around their desirability and suitability to work with children, around their qualifications, their level of experience, and that would be pulled together in a CV. And if we were looking to recruit agency social workers, then as the employer, as the council, we would look at their background and their experience. We take up references. We do all the robust checks. All the pre-employment checks will be done by the agency, not by the local authority. But it will be incumbent on us to make sure all of those things are in place, and that we look at the references. And we sometimes talk to the previous organisation they worked for. If we have any concerns about the practice of agency social workers, then we will consider whether we want to continue them in that particular arrangement, and we will feed that back to the agency.
Councillor Repton.
Yeah, I think it's right and proper that we are able to answer such searching questions of any of our staff, and I don't think we necessarily ought to single out social workers, but again, any questions that there are about the competency, about the professionalism, about the workloads, I think are right and proper that we answer those as fully as possible. But I think it's also to get balance. We ought to acknowledge the work that our social workers do. Some of the most complex work that you could imagine in the most difficult circumstances, with some of the highest caseloads that social workers have to have because of the numbers we have and the numbers referrals we have. It is difficult for them. They have the right level of support, and we are lucky in this city that, touch wood, I'm touching wood with both hands and both feet, we haven't had some of the problems so far that there have been elsewhere in the country. But some of that may be about luck. But it's imperative that we do keep up the highest standards that we have for our social workers. We make sure where we can, we reward them and retain them and enable them to make sure that they carry out that most difficult work on behalf of us all to keep children safe in the city. And with the work of the Safeguarding Board and the scrutiny that we actually have, and the questions, rightly, from Matthew and from yourself, Councillor Skelton, it's right that we air those here and we give reassurance to ourselves and to the public. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Repton. I think that's absolutely spot on. We do owe an enormous debt of gratitude to our social workers who face extremely difficult circumstances day in, day out on our behalf. So thank you for that. For no more questions, I shall ask Cabinet members just to show agreement for noting these recommendations. They'll be reported back to the scrutiny boards in due course. That's agreed. Lovely. Thank you. So we move on to item 9, which is the use of agency workers and consultants. And we have a report from the Supporting Derby's Workforce Board before us. I'm delighted to welcome Councillor Jackson here this evening. Is there anything you'd like to say in presenting the report, Councillor Jackson?
Well, thank you for letting me bring it to you. This is a piece of work that's been carried out by the whole of the, well, you can see actually from the whole of the board and a lot of other people who've contributed as well. And we're very pleased that we had an input from our colleagues in the trade union movement. They were very happy to be involved, and we were very happy to use the occasion to get their views. You can see from the forward that we have dealt with the matter of consultants and agency workers because of the amount of money that they cost the authority. They are very useful and do have a place, but in times of austerity we felt it was right to see if we could do this on well, don't like to use the word cheap more cheaply, but whether we could be more cost effective, perhaps that's a better way of putting it. And these are the recommendations that we have come up with. It's a bit for you, so I'm not going to go through it all, because I'm sure you've all had time to read it. But the future is that the matter of consultants will be referred to the Audit and Accounts Committee, and they will look at the procurement process for this, because we do spend a lot of money. Particularly, the figure quoted is 3.36 million, and we think that that is probably quite substantially more. As far as agency workers go, there are ways and means that we can perhaps reduce the bill there, which particularly in refuse and wastage, and we are looking at that to see what can be done, because we think there are more efficient ways of managing it, and now that we've had the opportunity to look at it in depth, we can perhaps implement these matters. So that will be looked at by HR, and hopefully we will be able to look to sort something out which is long overdue, this matter, and we're glad to have had the opportunity to do it. We hope the report will be useful to the Cabinet and the Cabinet member.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. That's extremely helpful. Councillor Eldrick, if you'd like to respond, please.
Thank you, Chair. And can I just say, thank you very much to Councillor Jackson for the report she's brought this evening, and to the work of the Supporting Derby's Workforce Scrutiny Board for going into such a level of detail. I think not only is it credit to the board itself, but also the new reorganisation of scrutiny as it's worked this year. I think this is a really good example of how that's worked and been very, very effective. So thank you. And I wholeheartedly support the recommendations that the Scrutiny Board has come up with. I apologise for not having been more personally involved in the review itself, but as Councillor Graves keeps telling everybody, I was off having some babies. So it was good to see the work continued whilst I was off. Just a little bit of context. In May last year, shortly after the election last year, we launched the Derby City's Employment Charter, which set out 10 principles of what we aspire to as an employer. We're a large employer in the city, and will continue to be a large employer in this city for quite some time. And we want to be a good employer. We want to value our workforce, and we want to make sure that we can maintain employment standards. And so we got together and set up a commission, which I chaired, and that was made up of officers and union representatives, and we came up with the 10 principles, and one of the principles we came up with was around agency workers, and another one was around consultants. And it was really great that the Scrutiny Board decided to take on the mantle of figuring out, having established those principles, what we could do to implement them. And there has been an awful lot of work that's been ongoing since May last year to implement the principles of the Charter and look at our aspirations as an employer. And I echo Councillor Jackson's sentiments about the involvement of our trade union colleagues in that work. It's been a very collaborative process, and I think that it's a good example of how industrial relations can work if you work in partnership with your trade union colleagues. In terms of the specifics around agency usage within the authority, given the size of the organisation and the diversity of the services that we provide, it would be, I think, naive to think that we could completely eradicate the use of agency workers or consultants. But because of the demand and not being able to predict demand, but also we are subject to the forces of the market. We've talked about agency social workers. That is a key area where we have a high usage of agency workers, which is amongst social workers. That is not necessarily something which is within our control. We're dictated by the market and the attractive conditions that are offered to social workers to be employed by agencies. However, we are doing some fantastic work in that area to try and recruit and retain more social workers by offering mortgage subsidies and other incentives to bring people into the city, to encourage people to come and live and work in this fine city. And I'm sure that that will be effective, and that by itself will reduce the cost of agency workers in this area. So I applaud the work that Andy and his team have been doing in that area. I think it's fantastic. I have to say, whilst wholeheartedly endorsing these recommendations, I have to express, Chair, a little bit of disappointment at at the Conservatives, really. Let's not beat around the bush. This fantastic work that the Overview and Scrutiny Board has been doing has been ongoing for a number of months, I think, Councillor Jackson, since July last year. Our Conservative colleagues sit on that Scrutiny Board. There are a number of them who sit on that Scrutiny Board. They've been involved with the process all the way through. And yet, all of a sudden, having been involved in that process, I'm reading in the papers and hearing on the radio that the Conservatives had this grand plan to reduce the cost of agency work, reduce our costs in terms of agency work by 50%. Now, that is a bold claim at best, but it is also, if you have that plan, I think in the best interest of the people of the City of Derby, you should have put that plan on the table last July and been part of the process of this Scrutiny Board to try and resolve the issues that we may, to try and reduce our agency worker costs. Not use it cynically as a political tool in the run-up to the elections to try and win votes. If you really, really care about this authority and you really, really care about what's in the best interest of the people of this city, which in times of austerity is saving money so that we can spend money on the services that people in this city love, we can keep swimming pools open, we can keep the Darley Park concert and all the other things that people cherish, then you put those ideas on the table. You don't come out at the last minute and use and claim that you can reduce the cost of agency workers by 50% with no plan, with no costed plan in place. It's just, pie in the sky. So, sorry, Chair, but I felt I needed to raise that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Eldred. Councillor Repton next, please.
Thank you, Chair.
And then Mr Youth Mayor.
Yeah, I found this report very interesting, and if there are ways, obviously, of reducing costs, so be it. But I think it's important that I draw the committee's attention to, in the main report, 4.7, in terms of when we're looking about using or not using agency workers. And it says here quite clearly, the alternative to not using agency workers is that statutory services would at times not be able to function and serve the community. As this alternative is clearly not acceptable, then the council has the alternative only has the alternative to employ more permanent staff to deal with issues such as seasonal peaks and staff absences. But there is a cost to that. When we look further down the page, what are the risks to the council in not using consultants and agency workers? So the risk is in not using consultants is that council would have to recruit a more substantial and specialised workforce at greater expense. There are specialist roles that attract a premium in the market, and these rates would fall outside our current pay and grading structure. Another risk is not using consultants is that the council would have to make the decision not to undertake certain schemes and projects in the future. So what we have here quite clearly, we would struggle to fulfil our statutory responsibility. We would struggle to do the thing that Councillor Holmes and Councillor Skelton was asking us to do, to make sure that our social workers are there, are competent, they're skilled, they're trained, they're supported, and able to fulfil their statutory responsibilities. They wouldn't be able to do that. Then, as Councillor Eldred has already referred to, we then have the jump with Councillor Holmes in the press saying, yeah, dead easy. We won't use agency workers, which I think it demonstrates quite clearly here. 40%, Councillor Holmes, of our agency workers are used for social work posts, skilled social workers posts. So it's not a nil cost. You're then suggesting that money that you can save from there, which you can't, because it's statutory responsibility, would pay for your fantasy island, would pay for the brown bins, would pay for more waste to be reopened, would pay for the assembly rooms to be open, would pay for a new recycling centre, which amounts to tens of millions of pounds. £5 million extra revenue. We've worked that out. So here's the rub, Councillor Holmes. You're either misleading the public, being economical with the truth, you either intend to cut something else more radically, or you intend to put, via a referendum, council tax up by 10%. That's 6% above the current level. A 10% increase in council tax must be on your agenda Because this would not deliver the savings that you need, or you must have other hidden cuts you'd make. But because we've been through those books, they'd have to be in statutory services. But you can't do that. So you box yourself in. It's about time you came truthful with the public and told them this is a pack of lies written on the back of a fag packet, or else you intend to go to referendum and put up council tax, or try to do, by 10%. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Repton. And next we have Philip Hutchinson, who is the Youth Mayor.
Just a question from the report. Just in between where Councillor Repton was reading in 4.9, it says that there are benefits to the council in employing agency workers rather than additional council staff, and the council can make savings in terms of employer national insurance, pension contribution and sickness and holiday entitlement. And I recognise that that's no way showed in the recommendations of the report, but I was just wondering, surely for any progressive council, they should be seeking to lower, to pay every worker, if they can, sickness and holiday entitlement, and rather than it being seen as a benefit in employing agency workers.
Councillor Eldred, do you want to answer that one?
Thanks, Philip. You're absolutely right. One of the, as part of the commitments under the Employment Charter, the first commitment, the second commitment, is around providing fair contracts and stability of employment. So clearly we set out, say, again, our aspiration, our aim, that we want to provide secure employment for people, and that means permanent employment for people, which would then, you know, give them national insurance contributions and pension contributions and all the things that would come along with that. So you're absolutely right. That is what we want to do as a progressive Labour administration. I think the reality is that we have, there are fluctuations in demands in terms of the service, and we can't always predict those demands. And so we have to balance our aims in terms of providing security and stability with the fact that we can't predict how many people are going to be leaving hospital next year. We can't predict necessarily how many children are going to need to be taken into care. So we have to have that flexibility, again, in the best interest of the people of Derby, so that we can provide the best service possible. So it's about that balance, and it is a delicate balance. There is work that we can do to reduce the number of agency workers, to have better workforce planning, but it is about striking that balance. But it's a really good question. Thanks, Philip.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hussain, next, please. And then Councillor Jackson.
To be honest, I don't think there is actually a simple solution to the predicament that we are faced with. But we can legitimately ask the question how this has come about. And I can only come to one conclusion, that it is the end result of free market ideology. Back in the 70s, we didn't have that dilemma. Even the 80s, we didn't have that dilemma. But when the market ideology took over, the Tory government was convinced that the best way to actually provide public services is by introducing competition and different providers. And it is part of that process. Now, the agency workers are actually paid more, 1/3 more. So if we are going to persuade people to come and work for us instead of the agency, well, we've got a real task in our hands. It's the government legislation which created that market economy in public services, and I think it's the governments who are going to ultimately have to deal with it. We haven't got I mean, if you look at the health service, most nurses are now employed by the agencies rather than NHS Trust. A similar phenomena is being experienced by local authorities, and I think it's legislation at the end of the day which will probably assist us. Otherwise, we can't compete with them with the resources, because they can always offer more, because ultimately they charge it back to us. So even if we pay an average social worker, say 40,000 instead of 30,000, which we currently pay, well, they will start paying 10,000, 15,000 pounds more, and we'll be back to the square one. We are experiencing the same dilemma with foster carers. Although we've doubled what we pay the foster carers, but the agencies just put them up by 40% or whatever, and we're always trying to play catch up. With all these professions now, the markets are eating us up. The ultimate answer is actually we ought to be looking at the governments to say, we want you to find a solution, put some sort of ceiling, some sort of cap, in terms of how much these agencies can charge us over and above what the normal that we pay. And I think that's where the solution lies. Otherwise, if we try to find a solution through the market mechanism, I think we would be struggling.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, Councillor Hussain. It's a national issue that all local authorities are facing, and as you say, there's this escalating spiral of cost because it's a statutory service. Agencies can charge what they like and just pass it back to the local authorities. So it does need some national attention. Councillor Jackson, I've got next.
Yes, it's just elaborating a little bit on Philip's question. One of the things that we did look at, Philip, was, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, refuse and wastage. Now, if you're ever a councillor, you will know that nothing makes residents more angry than having their bins collected. And so you can get all the lorries ready to go out and they're round, and you suddenly find that there aren't enough people to staff the lorries. So therefore, that's where you need to use agency staff to bring them in. But you can't really employ them because you don't know that you're going to need them the next day. So that was one of the main reasons why we had to bring them in as far as that goes. But Councillor Hussain's explained, and Councillor Repton, about the social workers and the importance that they have as agency workers.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no more questions or comments, the Corporate Scrutiny and Governance Board have made the following recommendation. The board resolved to agree the topic review recommendations to be presented to Council Cabinet for consideration. We have the two recommendations there at 9A, 2.1 and 2.2. To receive the report and the recommendations from the topic review, and to agree to report back to the board with the response. Can I ask Cabinet to agree that, please? Yeah, that's agreed. Thank you. And I'd just like to thank Councillor Jackson for all the work that you've put in, and also if you could pass on thanks to the other members of your scrutiny board. Thank you. So we come on to 9B, which is the Employment Charter. Okay. Okay. Is there anything further on the Employment Charter, Lisa? No. Okay. Councillor Russell? No. Okay. So we're at item 10 then, which is the Adult Learning Service Course Fees, and that is Councillor Russell.
Yes, I was just poised to respond to this item, Chair. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm actually quite pleased this report's come tonight. It's timely in giving me the opportunity to once again say how proud I am and we are as a council of our adult learning service. The Ofsted report that was completed recently showed our adult learning service as being rated good overall with outstanding aspects, and that's something that's very much being felt by community members in the feedback that I've received. What this report outlines in front of you is that there's going to be a modest increase in hourly rates, but a continuation of our concessions designed to ensure that those less able to pay are not excluded from adult learning courses. And we are in the process of developing what we're going to call an adult learning club, whereby which this principle is extended wider, giving the opportunities for those adults in our communities who may like to take up guitar lessons, sewing courses, things like that, who may have access to more disposable income, and using the income that we generate from that to offset against those who are less able to pay and those who are lower skilled, perhaps entering adult learning for the purposes of passing GCSEs or other education qualifications. So we're very excited about that, and I think our very good response from Ofsted with outstanding aspects has set us in good stead to progress those plans early in the next municipal year, and we're very excited to do that, subject to, of course, the people of Derby allowing us to continue in that role.
Councillor Holmes.
Just a quick one, Chair. On Appendix 1, Financial and Value for Money, it talks about the 2.732 million from the Skills Funding Agency audit, adult education budget. Is it possible to know where, has that gone, is that the same, is it less, is it more from the 15-16 allocation? I don't know if Martin Marples may know that, or...
Councillor Russell?
Yes, I can answer that, Chair. That's all right. It's automatic to presume that the finance officer would know that. I'm sure he does, but I do as well. There has been a slight increase in the budget, but actually, historically, I think, and I will be stood corrected if this is not the case, but it's actually a smaller increase than we have seen in previous years. So there's been a slight increase, but it is a smaller increase than has been previously.
Philip, please.
I'm just wondering, for some of these courses, especially the Learning Club and Modern Foreign Languages, I'm sure many young people as well would also, if they could, find it a valuable opportunity to learn schools they possibly wouldn't be able to learn in school. And so I'm just wondering if there's any way young people could be involved in these clubs, especially the for-profit ones.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. To be honest, I don't think it's probably anything we've considered before. And that's a very interesting point and something I will certainly take away and look at and maybe extend. Traditionally, obviously, with adult learning, it's been targeted at those who are 18 plus. But certainly, I think if there were young people who wanted to partake in some of these courses, that probably shouldn't be excluded. So yeah, we can certainly take that away and have a look. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? No. Okay. We have the recommendation from the Corporate Scrutiny and Governance Board, which met yesterday, which is the board resolved to support the recommendations to Council Cabinet outlined in the report and commend the work of the Adult Learning Service. And I think we'd all join in that, join in Councillor Russell with her congratulations to the service as well, having previously been a Cabinet member for this area. I also know in perhaps more detail than many others just what a good service it is and the excellent work that they do. So well done to them. So we have those two recommendations: to approve the amended fee structure for the academic year from the 1st of August 2016 and to delegate responsibility to the Strategic Director and the Cabinet member to adjust the fees if there's any significant change from the Skills Funding Agency during the course of the year. Cabinet agree with those recommendations? Yep, that's approved then, thank you. So we move on to item 11, which is Delivering Differently programme. This report sets out details of the Council's new Delivering Differently programme. Over the course of the next 3 years, Cabinet colleagues will be all too aware of the need to make cuts of 45 million due to the cuts that have come to us from the Conservative government. This programme puts in place a way of delivering those changes and finding new ways to make the Council more commercial in what we do. I don't know, Gordon, if you'd like to add anything further in terms of this report.
Thank you, Chair. As you've outlined, the Council has to make a further £45 million of savings over the next 3 years. And in addition to delivering these savings, the programme will support services develop new and innovative service delivery models with the aim of creating a modern, flexible and resilient Council. The Delivering Differently programme will support the delivery of 8 priority outcomes detailed in the Council plan and will be based around 3 themes: our communities, local people doing more for themselves and each other; our people, a modern and flexible workforce; and our services, services that allow people to be more self-managing and the Council to be more commercial. The programme will consist of a portfolio of projects, some cross-cutting and others specific to services. These projects will be aimed at delivering the savings already agreed by full Council, as well as seeking new and innovative ways to deliver our services in the future. Delivering and supporting a programme of this scale and complexity will require additional capacity. A key principle of the programme will be that wherever possible we will use existing knowledge, skills and experience from inside the Council to design and deliver the projects. To support this work and create the capacity required, we are proposing to create a Delivering Differently reserve using existing reserves as well as a new reserve which was established as part of the budget setting process. Robust governance arrangements are very important to make sure that the programme is delivered at pace and that the allocation of resources from the reserve is targeted at projects delivering the greatest benefits to the Council. We are establishing a strategic board chaired by the leader of the Council to oversee the programme. The programme is designed to last for 3 years to reflect the 3-year medium-term financial plan. Cabinet is asked to approve the recommendations outlined in paragraphs 2.1 to 2.3.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Youthmayor.
Sorry. Obviously, the Council, it's understandable why such a large amount of money the Council needs to look into how to best make these savings. But I'm just thinking that for a lot of the general public, it may be quite difficult to understand why 6 million is required to make this. And so I was thinking, is there any way that this programme could be made accountable, as it were, to the public by releasing quarterly reports open to the public, just to show what effect this programme is having and what improvements it's making to making the Council more efficient?
Thank you, Philip. Yes, I'm sure that will be possible. There will be reports back to Cabinet, I'm sure, and scrutiny in terms of the progress that's being made. So yes, I'm sure that will be absolutely right to do that. Indeed, and the monitoring officer tells me that that is one of the scrutiny recommendations as well, so happy to accept that. Okay, if there's no more questions or comments, I'll just read out the full comment of the Corporate Scrutiny and Governance Board, which is: the Board resolved to support the recommendations to Council Cabinet outlined and request a further report on the whole range of projects to be presented to a future overview and scrutiny board meeting. So it'd be great if you could be involved in that scrutiny process, Philip, as well. Lovely. So we accept that, and recommendations 3.1 to 3.3. Just have a show from Cabinet, please. Yep, that's approved. Thank you. So item 12 is contract and financial matters. Contained within this report are proposals for the submission of bids for Department for Transport funding, the approval of 2 assets to the disposals programme, the transfer of Section 106 revenue funding to reserves to be allocated in subsequent years in line with agreements, approval of a lease for open space at Chellaston Park and development of opportunities to take on Chesapeake Community Centre facilities, and approval of arts grants allocations for 2016-17. Those recommendations are set out in paragraphs 2.1 to 2.8. In addition, I'm proposing an additional recommendation relating to the 2015-16 Neighbourhood Board funding. So that's to insert the following: to approve that any funding committed by neighbourhood boards by the 31st of March 2016 will be carried forward for allocation in subsequent years. So if any of the neighbourhood boards have allocated funding in good faith prior to the 31st of March and have not yet managed to spend the money on those projects, then this proposal would mean that, that those projects are able to be completed. Any questions or comments? Councillor Holmes.
I welcome that a recommendation on the funding. There was a worry that schemes that were agreed but not delivered may be under threat, so I welcome that. 2.1, I actually met with Cycle Derby, and I think they were meeting with the various leaders of the groups. And my meeting went well. I didn't sign the pledge because there were areas that I didn't agree with and thought there was actually a better way of moving forward with the council. And this is one of them. I'd just like to ask whether you agree with me, Chair, that I wouldn't agree with changing the transport priorities of the council, because my view and my group's view is that maintenance should come very highly. You know, got to keep the city moving, fill those potholes, all those, you know, the nuts and bolts things that people expect us to deliver. It's already been said tonight that bins are very important to residents, and so are making sure that the roads and pavements are in a decent condition. So I do welcome this, and I think this is the way forward. And I did explain to Cycle Derby that I believe that to secure this external sustainable transport funding that is available by government, we've been successful in securing as a council, is the way forward to deliver for sustainable travel, for cyclists, for cycle groups, to take the project forward, whilst also keeping a close eye and a focus on our core, should we say, business, which is keeping the city moving.
Yes, Councillor Holmes, thank you. Yeah, in terms of Cycle Derby, it is a very important organisation. They do some very valuable work, certainly this Labour administration is committed to doing all that we can to support Cycle Derby in the work they do, which involves applying for external grants as they arise, as we are doing in this case, and also encouraging Cycle Derby to become more commercial and look for opportunities for raising more income and generating funds themselves. And I think on that model, there is the opportunity for them to be very successful in the future and carry on delivering an excellent service for the city. So, absolutely. Are there any other questions on that? The recommendation from Scrutiny Board then is to support the recommendations to Council Cabinet as I outlined. Cabinet members in approval, please. Yeah, that's carried. Thank you. And finally, item 13, which again, it's an opportunity that this Labour administration of the council is taking up in terms of maximising our funding coming in from external sources, and Councillor Graves will be very pleased to know that we're making full use of applying for funding from the European Union in terms of benefiting the city. We get very few favours from the central government in Westminster, so from the Conservatives, so we're more than happy to take up funding opportunities from the European Union, and another good reason to vote to remain when the referendum comes in June. So the recommendations are listed there. Unless there's any questions or comments. Councillor Graves.
Clearly, Councillor Orson, I've got to respond to what you've just said. Had this money been, had the government of the day not been having to pay the money into the European Union, maybe you'd have had twice as much available to spend, and that would clearly be a good reason to leave the EU.
But more likely, with the Conservative government, we would have seen absolutely nothing at all. So that's the other side of the coin, Councillor Graves. Okay, thank you. Accept the recommendations of the Scrutiny Board and as printed. Agreed. That brings matters to a close for this evening. Thank you very much for your attendance and happy campaigning.